All right, it should be good. I'm gonna pull in the waiting room now.
All set?
Yep.
All right, I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for October 14th. 5 members attending, and Brianna is trying to log on as we speak and will join us later. So let's all start by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Before we get started, is there any public comment out there? We have 3 minutes per speaker.
Yes, this is Harry Shaker.
Harry, state your name, address.
Harry Shaker, 87 Long Meadow Hill Road. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to speak on one of the issues that you're going to be talking about tonight, I believe, which are the 2 boats that the Candlewood Lake authorities brought to the Board of Selectmen last week. I have been very concerned with money and budgeting with the opening of the schools. During our meetings with the Board of Education on the PPE, I was very concerned with how much money was. I believe it cost us around $1 million to open up the schools on top of our regular school budget. And my concern was that we were making sure we were getting the best prices and really shaking the bushes as far as desks and different equipment. I did vote yes for the PPE because I realized that we need to get the schools going and get the kids into the school. When we brought when we were talking about the 2 boats, I again brought up the concern of spending $60,000 it's a joint effort. There are 5 towns. Each were supposed to contribute $60,000 towards 2 boats for Candlewood Lake. And I again brought up the concerns of not knowing where we are going to be as far as costs go moving forward this year. Heaven forbid that we get some students or teachers with the virus and we have to close down and go all viral and then come back. I'm very concerned about that. At the time when I voted yes last week or at our last meeting, I forgot the fact that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that Brookfield, I believe it was 2 years ago or last year, purchased a fireboat in the tune of $200,000 or more. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm driving home from Ocean City, New Jersey, and I don't have any notes in front of me. And we paid for that alone. That was not a joint effort. And I'm assuming that if there is a fire on the lake and they need their boat, New Milford needs our boat or whatever, that it's going to be available. I don't know if there's any compensation or not coming from that. But I can tell you now, after thinking about this, if the vote were today or the vote were tomorrow, I would vote no for this. I understand the need for safety on the lake. I am not sure why the DEP is not in favor of us having some type of fee or for boats out of state or out of our areas using the lake to help defray costs. But again, I did vote yes at the time. It was with great hesitance. And I just wanted to let you know now, I would not vote yet again. I just think we need to be more careful with our money. If we have $60,000 someplace, then that needs to be saved or given back to the town, back to the taxpayers, who certainly, if the way it looks with the COVID, it looks like it's going to get bad again, or at least worse than it is now, people are going to need that money. So thank you for your time. If any of my facts that I'm telling you aren't factual, again, I apologize. I don't have my notes in front of me, but thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Anybody else on public comment? Okay, hearing none. Move on to communications. Brianna's not on, so let's move past that. Mark?
Yep.
You want to make that motion?
I would like to make a motion in order to get certainly the Attorney Beecher, so we don't have to pay him to sit here longer than we have to. I'd like to make a motion. We move to the Candlewood Lake Road waterline presentation.
The executive session.
I think we have a presentation and then the executive session. I'm not sure. Are we just going straight to executive session without a presentation?
Yeah, the
I'm
presentation
expecting
is
some more information tonight.
the presentation is within the executive session. I think you should do the executive session first, then come out, look at the assessment reports that I sent you, and move from there.
I will move that we go to the executive session on the Candlewood Lake Road waterline.
A second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Oh, wait a
So we
minute.
will-
Wait a minute. You need to, I think you want to invite the town attorney in that motion, and probably John Lucas, the treasurer,
And
So
Marcia, who
I
has
would
the
amend,
presentation.
and Greg Dembowski.
and Greg Dembowski, I would amend my motion to
Marcia.
include Attorney Thomas Beecher and Marcia Marion, John Lucas, and Greg Dembowski into the executive session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Second,
You have a second?
sure, second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, board members, I'm pushing you off into a separate room. You'll have an option on your screen to come back to the main room when you're done. All right, and for those of you still in the main room here, we are still on the YouTube stream, so I'm just going to leave everybody muted for now.
So Steve, they don't let you in?
Hey, Dan, you kicked me out of the executive session.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, your name wasn't mentioned on that one. Let me push you into the room. And there he goes.
Okay, now what?
Well, thank you for mentioning that part, Bob. So he got into the room. Now, because YouTube is still active, we are just here waiting for them to finish.
So we don't see each other, we just kind of hang out here?
Nobody has their video on, so it's just our audio right now going out to YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Thank you all for hanging in there.
All right. We back with everybody?
Looks like you're all back in.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that we move the Board of Ed financial report to next. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Glenn?
Yes.
Steve here. You may want to make a motion to have that hearing.
We will later. I gotta get, we gotta go to get Rosa and Ken Post and all them. They've been hanging on here, so we can close up our business at the end, right? Under old
Think
business
so.
or new business, I mean, right? Rosa, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right.
So actually, Ken and John had to step off. They, it was, I think, for the level of detail that you guys want, I think maybe it's best if we, schedule a special meeting. Of course, we can walk through anything you want tonight. Bob is still on the line, and if there's anything that the two of us, can't
We
answer.
can walk through it. We
Yeah.
can walk through it.
Okay.
There won't be anything too crazy, I don't think.
Everything's pretty crystal clear. So I don't know what you want to start with.
How
I think
about
all
we,
you guys have the documents, right?
yeah, how about I just go? How's that? And we
Okay.
and you tag along. How's that? I'm not trying to be rude. I just, no,
That
so
sounds
I asked for a couple of highlights to your budget. You're obviously y'all are doing a great job with running the schools right now, and you're under a lot of stress, and we all appreciate the pressure you're under. So thank you for what you're doing. How's that? I asked a couple questions earlier of the key things of budgets that were driving last year's overruns, underruns, and everything. The risks that we put into the budget and things like that. So going over it, the teachers' retirement that we pushed for, discussed, we talked about, we're about spot on. You put 200,000 in, we're at 209. So that came in correct. We put in some money for leave of absences and different, we pushed a little bit of the envelope there. That was spot on. Your special ed, we took out the contingency of about 300,000. There's a lot of ins and outs, and I understand you gave us the list that we all could review. The ins and the outs showed us that we're about 6,000 over budget, which is minimal compared to the number. So in all of the areas that the Board of Ed had risk of where the budget was reduced, they all have covered themselves, correct?
That's correct.
As of today.
As of today.
Yes.
So we do realize that if the special ed, someone moves in or gets assessed or things change, Bob and Rosa, that we told you we would be responsible to cover that.
Yes.
Yeah, then I will just add, Glenn, I asked in our finance committee meeting, were there a lot of in-flight evaluations? And there really aren't that many in-flight evaluations either. So it would have to be somebody coming in from left field.
So then I know John's not here and Ken's not here, but you two are relatively comfortable with those budgetary items.
Correct.
Yes.
Well, and I will just add we've had vacancies, which was one of the sheets that we had, and we've actually had some vacancies for a variety of reasons that have actually yielded more savings, which shows up in kind of the offsets to the COVID. So from a staffing point of view, not only did the retirements come in, but there's been about $140,000 of vacancies that we didn't fill temporarily. We just left them empty until we were able to restaff the position.
Right. Now, that there was a question I had on that as well. Ken put it to 9:30 because the report ended at 9:30, I think. Are some of these positions still open? Because he put in his cover letter that he looks now to be about $88,000 off for the year, which I know we're so early into the year, that's a rough number to even justify. But are there still open positions that we're still going to accumulate the savings on?
I don't have Ken here to answer it, but he actually put on his chart, he put the dates of when the positions were flowing past April 30th.
Yep.
I'm sorry, no, it's September 30th. And most of them were filled as recently as mid October.
Yep.
At this point, we don't have a lot of open ones, but they do come up. I mean,
Okay.
all you need to do is have someone who's a non-teacher who has to be out for COVID, and we might live with it for a period of time. So,
okay.
This will continue, I think, through the year, and he's going to keep doing this sheet for us every month now. So,
okay. On the transportation side, I sort of got lost in his numbers of his COVID expense savings. He has 57,000 in savings because of 5 fewer days, which is what we talked about, Bob, totally, the last meeting.
Yeah.
We lost the 1% pay forward because we only paid for half of the year. So we didn't gain the full 20. We only gained 10, right? Because he has a minus 10,096.
Right, for the first half of the year. Yep.
But on your financial report, on page 2 of your financial report, it shows on the transportation line, we're ahead 66,000 on the transportation line. Now, in the end, all the numbers probably wash out. If you take the 50 on his COVID report, you take the 57 Well, I don't even know, because like I say, he highlights it 5 fewer days on the transportation line on one report. At
What
50
his projection to us is on the far right. He's actually projecting 46,000. I don't know why. I can't answer why we haven't encumbered the full amount, but I'll go ask him that question and get back to you on it.
Yeah, that's where I get lost, Bob. I mean, his number may be right in the end, and I'm not saying it isn't, but I have a hard time driving on the road to figure out which turns we're taking to get there.
No, I understand. I understand the question. It's the encumbrance column sometimes is when you put the POs out there, and it may just be a timing issue, but I'll find out exactly why that's 66 and his forecast is only 46 off. So it's that $20,000. There must be a reason for it. I'm guessing it's the second half of the prepayment savings.
And that should be a firm number when we figure this out, right? I mean, that shouldn't change. So we should be able.
I suspect that's right. We may have just done the PO, assuming that we had to do we were going to get all the savings, and we didn't get the first half, and he's got the PO issued at the lower amount.
Right.
I'll find out.
Because then we can basically take that off our list of watch items. It should be finalized and fixed, other than the athletic.
All right, Bob's going to find out. Let's move on. Sorry.
Yeah,
all right.
I got that as a follow-up for you. And by the way, we're still monitoring a lot of line items on transportation. So we're clear, because he hasn't declared it yet because he doesn't have line of sight. But you know what's happening with athletics and field trips and the special ed in town stuff. There's still a lot of moving parts around transportation that he's showing as in his opportunities, but is something we're monitoring every month in our financial reporting. So.
Okay. And then, do you two have any concerns that we need to be aware of?
No, not at this time. In fact, if anything, we're driving to find more opportunities, more than concerns, because we've done some really good things this year in terms of actually hammering down on our control and on our and some actions we took that were helping with special ed costs. And we're not seeing the exposures that we've seen in the prior years, which is good. And that's been the one area. There's some pluses and minuses that he's picked up in here. Like, we have a little less tuition coming in from the preschool and things like that, but he's captured everything that he could see.
Okay. And then on the COVID side, is there any expenses coming our way that we need to be aware of to go from the hybrid to the full scale?
Well, he's tried to you asked us in our last meeting to give you a full view of all of it, including what we spent last year. I had them in pieces in our last meeting, if you remember.
Yes,
we put it all in one thing. It's all includes the hybrid going to full, and it's all in this 3-page sheet that he gave you is his current best view of everything that's been ordered and is trying to get in, and most of that stuff is on its way in. The big unknown, and I'll be frank, he's showing it 0 right now. We keep trying to hire lunch monitors, and we can't get anyone to take the jobs. So right now that's a 0. It could be, if we can hire some people, we'd like to hire them, but that's in the personnel costs. You'll see it on the second page. Lunch monitors at 0. But
how have you guys been able to manage without them?
We've had some amazing administrators, right down to the principal, going in and monitoring classrooms for lunches.
They're skipping their lunch in order to let the teachers have their chance at lunch. So that's kind of what's doing everything we can do. So it's we got it, and John gave him a lot of credit, but he says it can only last so long. So I asked John to go look at, are we offering too low a pay, basically the minimum wage jobs? So do we need to do something to attract some people to take the jobs? And he's thinking about it, but he doesn't want to spend a ton of money on that. So but that, if we could get you need a dozen lunch monitors across the district, basically.
Right.
And that is, we'd like to get that if we could. That would be the one exposure that he talked about.
And you'd certainly have my support if you had to do something to get people to do that. As I said before, I didn't think you were going to be able to get people at that rate.
I'm not sure we get people at almost any rate. That's the question I have. It's not a job that people want to go take. So in this environment.
Marcia and Steve, you've been working with everybody on the COVID costs. Everybody's comfortable on that as well?
Yeah, I am. And Marcia's got a quick update during her report.
Yep, and the only thing that interacts with the Board of Ed is that they have, we had originally thought, although it didn't say anything in the motion, that we were taking the computers and the Chromebooks out of the town contingency side, and then Ken has fit them in here under their side. So we're going to add them back to the town contingency side. And put the expenditure in. There's Ken and I coordinated on that one.
So Bob,
essentially it's going to be
Rosa, you're good with all of that?
Yep, I think we talked about it at our finance committee meeting, and I think that Marcia and Ken are working great together on this stuff.
Agreed.
Anyone else on the Board of Finance want to ask a question?
No, I just would like to say one thing. Marcia and I have been meeting with John and Ken on a weekly basis to discuss budget and other issues that affect the town and the schools together. And it's been working very, very well. And I want to thank them for doing that because it allows us to create reporting and do what we need to do much easier than we have been in the past. And it's been we're going to continue to do it for as long as possible.
Okay. Anyone else on the Board of Finance?
And
The only thing I'd like to say is I appreciate the tough job you're doing. I'm sure I don't even know how tough it is, and I can't imagine doing it. So thank you for that. But, you know, budget season is here, and I know you guys are working on that. I'm sure the rest of the board would agree. If there's anything we can do in front of it to help you along so that we all see eye to eye when this comes together, because you're going to be very busy in February, probably just in March as you are now. So anything we can do to help, we're here.
So one of the things I will just tell you is we talked about it at our finance committee meeting is last year we went around a couple of times on format, what's comfortable for you, what works for the schools. And Marcia and Ken agreed we would kind of dust off last year's, figure out how to tune it so that it works for all of us. And then Ken's going to build that into the process so he's not having to chase it uphill. And so they're starting to work on that. We probably will want someone from the Board of Finance to actually look at it and say, yep, that's exactly that. That'll work for us. And because that will, for us, you know, there's a lot of moving parts in a school budget. And if I can get Ken doing it in the first way, that's in a format that works for all of us, it eliminates all the redo, and it comes in right the way people want it the first time. The data is all there. It's all been about formatting and what are you comparing to and things like that, and at what level of granularity. And so we agreed that we would try to take a week or two now between Ken and Marcia and John and Steve, let them look at it. And then once we have a proposal, we'll run it past the Board of Finance and let you guys take a look at it and make sure it's all good.
That's wonderful. That's my point. Is
I'm sorry, Mark.
The more you get done now right the first time, not right, you're right before, but it saves you time in the long, all of us time in the long.
Well, we're on the same page, the happier we all are. So
yeah. And Eileen, we want sign off from all the boards that, okay, here's our format, it's agreed upon, then we move forward.
Correct. Eileen, you've been a part of the subcommittee now for the past few meetings. Can you do this?
Yeah, I thought I had agreed to before, but yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Okay, that's how I'd like to see it go. Is you've been involved with it, so if you can help and steer that along, it'd be appreciated. Rosa, Bob, I apologize for taking it over, but I just wanted to, we let you hang for so long. I didn't want you to go through a whole lot of stuff without getting to where we wanted to go. So I apologize for the delay. I apologize for you guys being here so late. And I think we don't have any more questions, do we?
Okay. No problem. If anything comes up, just let us know.
Yeah, and we're going to keep doing these monitoring reports because they were the big budget risk items, and we'll make sure you guys see them regularly and have Ken and us available for questions you might have. And if there's any other types of questions, feed them to me, because what we're doing is trying to make sure the two finance committees, the Board of Ed Finance Committee and this committee, are absolutely in sync with each other.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Yep. Good night. All right, now, how about, I'd like to make a motion that we let the Candlewood Lake Task Force presentation come next.
I'll second.
All in favor? All right, okay, Candlewood Lake.
Hi, Dan. This is Joan Archer. I'm a delegate from New Fairfield. I was wondering if I can share my screen.
Joan, you should have access to.
Okay, thank you.
Joan, could you get a little closer to your microphone? You're a little hard to hear.
Sure.
Okay, this is Mary Ann Gaffey. I am a Brookfield delegate to the CLA. We have a number of people here from the CLA tonight. I'd like to introduce them. We have Mark Horvath, who is our executive director, who is coming from another meeting. We have Bill Lohan, who is our treasurer and also a Brookfield delegate. We have Joan Archer, who you have already met. She is a delegate from New Fairfield. We have Doug Cushney, who is a delegate from Sherman, and our assistant patrol chief, Nick Malice, joining us. We're going to have a little bit of a tag team. Joan's going to be running the slideshow. I'll be talking to you at the beginning. I'll be turning it over to our assistant chief to talk about the patrol, and then to our executive director to talk about the boats. Okay? So why are we here? Basically, we're here because the CLA is responsible for public safety on the lake, and we lost 2 of our patrol boats this summer. New boats need to be ordered by the end of October for spring delivery. And we need to get funding for those right now. I'm going to walk you through why we're here at this unfortunate time of trying to ask for funding out of budget cycle. We realize it's a difficult year for everybody, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't feel it was absolutely necessary. So we're going to talk about how we ended up not having boats, where we go from here, how we make the best financial decisions for the town, and how we move forward, okay? So just in case you've forgotten, this is Candlewood Lake, which we forget is such a beautiful item right in our backyard. We've got thousands of people coming, and it's a 5,400 acre lake. If you're not familiar with the Candlewood Lake Authority, we were formed in 1972 to provide public safety and law enforcement on the lake. And a few years later, environmental protection was added, and we are an organization that is funded by the 5 towns around the lake. And by ordinance, the 5 towns split evenly our budget. They share our expenses. It's our responsibility to let the towns know what we need to have to provide public safety and the environmental protection that we are obligated to provide. And we are obligated, obviously, to try to be the best stewards of the town's money. And then the towns, of course, are obligated to provide what they are willing and able to provide to fund us. As you know, our lake has been changing over the last 5 years or so. We've seen more and more people coming to the lake. We have a lot of people on the islands, many more people on boats, lots of noise problems and safety problems. And in addition, I'm sure you heard we had a zebra mussel this year, which had a lot of environmental concern. And we have a lot of concerns about pollution and erosion on the islands and water quality. So let's talk a little bit about what our Marine Patrol does, because that's what we're here about tonight, even though the other part of what we do is just as important. The short answer, which Nick really doesn't like me to say, is that the Marine Patrol are your police department on the water. But what I want you to remember is that the Marine Patrol is not just out there to, well, we call them write infractions or write tickets. The Marine Patrol also is doing community policing, the same as the Brookfield Police Department was, which means that they want to focus on creating a safe environment and prevent crime before it happens. So they're the people out there that are taking care of you on the lake. Let's look at what's happened over the years with the number of boats on the lake. This goes from 78 all the way up to 2019. Every year the CLA actually goes out very early in the morning and counts all the boats on the lake that they can see from the lake. This is a little deceiving because if you look over on the left axis, you'll see that those numbers are in thousands of vessels. And the important thing to look at here is that in the last 3 years, we've had almost 250 more boats of the regular, cabin cruiser pontoon boat. And then look at the PWCs, up more than 10% in the last 3 years. Note that the numbers from 2018 on are a little different because we stopped counting paddle boards. But these are a significant number of boats on the lake, and this doesn't include the boats that come in on the town ramps and the state ramps. So what happened this year? Oh my God, what didn't happen this year? We had a zebra mussel. We closed the town ramps. We closed sport leagues. Danbury closed their beach. First Light closed the islands. We had New Fairfield talking about a noise ordinance because, of course, our patrol can only enforce boating law. And there is no noise ordinance on the lake for them to enforce. So one of the issues that we've been dealing with is noise. So they've been looking at a noise ordinance. And in addition, we shut down, or Lamont shut down the state boat ramp in Danbury, which is something that we've never seen before. You've probably seen some of these pictures of the overcrowding on the lake. If you've been on YouTube or TikTok, you'll see that we are very popular on social media right now. And these issues are not going to go away. There's no reason to think that the lake won't be just as crowded, if not more crowded next year and in the future. As somebody said the other night, this is not your father's lake. It's probably not even your older brother's lake. This is a new lake for us to deal with. This slide gives you an idea of just in the last 2 years what's happened with the patrols. As you can see, the number of accidents has almost tripled, and these numbers only went through September 8th. But I also want you to look at the number of service calls. That's over 600 calls, and those are infractions that are written. That doesn't include when somebody is stopped and given a verbal warning, or towed, or done a safety check, or anything like that. So over 600 infractions in over just 100 days on the lake, and most of those are weekdays. You can see it's pretty clear that the patrol is going from one problem to the next. They're not being able to be proactive in any way, and this just isn't the way to keep our lake safe. At the beginning of this year, the CLA had 3 boats. On your upper left, we had the 2017 Robalo. We had the 1997 McKee in the lower left. And on the lower right is the 1993 Steiger Craft, which was the boat that's used for our science and education, our water quality boat. It became very clear in late spring with the arrival of COVID that we weren't going to be able to have our officers ride 2 on a boat, that because of public distancing, we were going to have boats go side by side because officers do not go out alone on the lake. So the CLA was fortunate enough to find this 1999 Aquasport, which we purchased with some of our money and through a private grant so that we would have 4 vessels on the lake this summer. This gives you an idea of what it looks like when we had the boats running side by side. So even though we had 4 boats out on the water, you can see there's an awful lot of lake that's not covered. And we need to really look at the way this lake is shaped, because we compare ourselves to Lake Lenona and Lake Zor that we know don't have these 4 or 5 fingers. And Nick will be talking about how that impacts the patrol. And here's an actual picture of our boats out on the lake side by side this summer. Now, to give you an idea, these are the boats. The Siger was in service in the spring, out of service by the end of the year, hull failure. The McKee was in service in spring, out of service, hull and motor failure. These boats were being driven to death this summer, and they were also being driven in an extremely different environment than we used to have. Those of you who've been out on the lake know how much rougher the water is and how much harder this is on the boats. So that means at the end of the year, we had just 2 boats left. I'm sorry, Joan. We have the Robalo, our patrol boat, and we have the Aquasport, which was the boat that we just purchased this summer. Those are the only 2 boats. So where do we go from here? Well, we know that the lake has a lot more usage and it has a lot more traffic. We know that we're getting a lot of complaints about noise. We're getting inundated with complaints about health and safety issues on the islands. And with only 2 boats, we had to do something. Now, earlier around the middle of the summer, the CLA had formed a task force to look at what we could do to address all of these issues: the overcrowding, the noise, the islands, et cetera, et cetera. And we started looking at what other lakes did and talking to the people at other lakes and talking to them about how they address these issues, what type of patrol boats they used, et cetera, et cetera. And it quickly became very clear that the first step that had to happen to address any of these issues was to step up the number of patrols on the lake. And so when we started looking for new boats, we also had to think about what type of boats we need. This leaves us to be asking for 2 new boats to replace the 2 that we lost last year. And we'll continue to use the environmental and science boat as a patrol boat on the weekends in the meantime. And the next slide is a graphic that helps show this better. So our little blue boats are patrol boats, and the green boat is the science boat. CLA has traditionally had 2 patrol boats on the water on the weekends and 1 during the week. To give you an idea, Lilanona and Zor also both have 2 boats on the weekends for significantly smaller lakes. This spring, with the purchase of the Aquasport and using the environmental boat, we had 4 boats at the beginning of the summer, but they were running side by side. And by the end of the summer, we only have 2 boats. We feel that we need to have 3 patrol boats, dedicated patrol boats, and the 4th boat, the environmental boat, so that we can have 4 boats on the lake next summer and going forward in order to provide adequate public safety. I'll turn it over to Nick and he can talk to you about what that means, having 4 boats on the lake. Do we have Nick?
Yep, thank you, Marianne. Appreciate it. So I like to look at this slide and, have everybody think about it as if you were driving down Federal Road and you saw a Brookfield police officer. You may not be doing anything wrong. You might not be speeding, but you might let off the gas, cover the brake, check your speed, because there's a visibility there for one of your local police departments or police officers that is on patrol. The lake is 65 miles of shoreline. It takes us 15 to 20 minutes to get from one end to the other. So response time, by the time we wind up getting to an area that we're called to, we like to say that it's GOA. The person that or the event that we're getting called to is gone on arrival. What we're proposing here with the proper equipment is that we'll be able to cover these 4 areas that you see, the entire lake for the entire day, and have a 5-minute response time versus a 15-minute response time. And I think that's the key. That's what we're talking about. We want to influence recreational boaters and make sure they know that we're in the area, and we can mitigate any, bad behavior, or let's not call it bad behavior. Like, let's just say that, people that go out to recreate on the lake kind of sometimes check their brains at the dock. They want to go out, they want to have fun, and they forget the rules of the road. And we want to be there as a high visibility, heavy presence to make sure that people are kind of checking their brake and realizing that, they have to keep things within a safe limit for their family and the rest of the recreational users. So we're talking about if we have the proper equipment to have special operations. So what you might see and what you see in this slide on the picture on the right is Lanton's Cove on the lower end of that picture, where we would have 1 or 2 vessels stopping everyone that comes out of Lanton's Cove. The objective here is to talk to each one of the owners of that vessel, make sure they have the proper safety equipment, make sure they're not overloaded, make sure they understand the rules of the road. And if they don't understand the rules of the road, we'll educate them. If they do not have the proper safety equipment or the proper documentation, we can turn them around right there, well within our rights as far as the rules that we are held to through DEP and Coast Guard regulations. We have the right to stop any vessel on the water at any time without probable cause. We will stop them. We'll stop every single vessel. We will not discriminate. Anybody that is out of line within safety obligations or obligations that they are to adhere to, we'll turn them around, terminate their voyage. If they come out later on and they have the proper safety equipment, then we'll check them again. If you look up the center of the screen, that would be Pine Island, or Sand Island right there, Sand Island and Pine Island. Position 2 boats there. Do the same thing. Stop people before they get to the island. Some of the issues that we ran into with these, on the islands this year and in past years, we've had grills that were on board, garbage that was left there. We can educate boaters, stop them before they get to the islands, make sure they understand that their grills can't come off and stay chained to trees on the island. They have to take their garbage with them. Advise them if the islands are closed that they're not to go on the islands. They could tie up off the islands, but not walk onto the islands. And the same thing over on Blueberry Island. Week and a half ago, we had somebody on Blueberry Island with a chainsaw cutting down trees for firewood. I mean, it's cooler outside, right? But no one wants to bring lumber onto their boat. By the time that we went from New Milford down to New Fairfield to Blueberry Island, the chainsaw was off. There's a pretty good fire going. And, the islands right now, they're not closed. It's not like we can, stop them right now from making a fire on the island, because we've not had the ability to educate people before they get there. And I think that's our point, right? As Marianne mentioned, there's a difference between policing and just enforcing laws. If you were to look at, let's say, NYPD and their traffic enforcement, pretty black and white. Your car is double parked, your car is parked on the wrong side of the street, you're gonna get a ticket. They don't talk to you, they put the ticket on the windshield, they walk away, and that's it. On Candlewood Lake, the Marine Patrol is an educational force as much as it is a law enforcement force. But we cannot educate unless we have people out there making contacts, handing out paperwork, letting people know that when they're out there having fun, they actually have neighbors that are right beside them, be it recreators or homeowners, and they need to be respectful of those people. And that's our objective. We're not out there to write tickets. We're not out there to boost infractions. We don't see any of the monetary benefit from that. That's all going to the state. Our objective is to educate and then reinforce with infractions if it needs to get to that level. So what we want to do is stop those calls from coming into town hall. We don't want you to be occupied with that. We're willing to take those calls on our end. And what we want to do is get ahead of it very quickly with adequate equipment and make as many contacts as we can to educate people to stop the bad behavior before it happens.
Okay, this is a picture of our 2 boats at the top. And what we'd like to have is 2 additional boats for next year. Well, we know we need to have 2 additional boats for next year. We feel it is most responsible to be moving up to a different type of boat. In our research with other lakes, we have found that the CLA practice of buying recreational boats and using them as patrol boats, we know it wasn't really working, and the more traffic that we had on the lake, the less it was working. And we found out that other people are using different type of boats that would give a much better return to the town's money. And so we want to talk about those type of boats, and I'll be turning it over either to Mark if he's back, or if he's not back, to Doug Cushney. Mark must still be at the other meeting. So Doug, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you.
Give it a shot. I haven't done this before, but we'll. So these are purpose-built boats. These boats are designed to be patrol boats. They are aluminum as opposed to.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Doug. It went crazy.
That's okay. So we have been using recreational boats that have been converted, more or less fishing type boats that are being converted to patrol boats, and these are much more purpose-built. One of the important things that we've learned over time is that we're not in the business of towing people, but the patrol runs into more and more situations where they have to be there to get someone out of a dangerous situation, to move them to a safe spot. You'd be surprised what people do when they're out on the water. And there was a company named Cito that used to be out there. They're not there anymore. To have a marina come out, there's usually timing situations that our patrol guys get in a position where they have to move people to a safe spot or out of a situation. So these boats are much more capable of doing that. The lake's usage has changed. I mean, regular recreational boats just get beaten to death out there. These boats are much more durable. They're designed to be rafted up with other people. And for all purposes, they're much more durable, can land on islands and just be a much better investment long-term for patrol use.
Yeah, you should add, Doug, that these should last twice as long. We're looking at 40 to 50 year lifespan for these boats.
Absolutely. These boats will last twice as long as the fiberglass boats. And the other point to make here is that the fiberglass boats that we've been using, the materials, gel coat's a porous material that they're covered in, and fiberglass, and flotation can absorb water over time. The boats get heavier. There's not wooden boats anymore, but these boats are basically have a resale value once their life is once they've been pretty beat up, they can be reconditioned. Fiberglass boats are more or less throwaway products. So these will last double the time, be much more durable and much more functional for our use right now. And they can be adapted over time. I mean, if they need to be repowered, things can be repaired and reconfigured if need be for different engines. If this boat will outlast the engines also. So it's a much better return on our investment and a much more useful product to start with.
Okay.
But Doug, I'm going to jump in just for a minute.
Sure.
These boats are lighter. As Doug mentioned, they are very durable. Right now, when if I'm going to pull up to an island and I'm going to beach a fiberglass boat, it doesn't matter how many times, if it's 1 time or 10 times, every time that I wind up beaching a boat on the islands to speak with, a recreational boater that's jumped on the island, I'm degrading that hull every time that I'm doing it. With an aluminum boat, that's not happening. They're lighter, they're more fuel efficient, they are quicker, they get us to, the area that we need to be in a shorter amount of time. We are more visible, and the leverage we have from a standpoint of being higher than the recreational boater as we are positioned in the vessel gives us a level of security that we don't have right now. Many times in our modified recreational vessels, we are kind of looking up into a vessel instead of looking down and down into a bigger vessel. So if you can picture it, you're sitting on a bar stool looking down at your dinner table. You can see the whole table. If you are on a standing stool looking up at the dinner table, you can't see what's on top of the table. And that's important because these are not, I'm not talking about the recreational user as you might see it, you and myself. I live in New Fairfield, I live on the lake. I'm not talking about my neighbors that we might be stopping. I'm talking about, other people that are out on the lake that are out there in the middle of the night. And when we pull up to them, we can't see them. This boat, this type of vessel, a vessel that's made for law enforcement purposes, sits higher in the water. We're able to see down. And like I said, more fuel efficient, more durable, better all around vessel that's made for what we're doing right now.
Okay, I think Mark's here to take us on to this slide. Are you back, Mark? No, he's not. He said he was. Then I will talk to you about these, the 3 boats that we were looking at. We are at the lower end of aluminum boats, so there actually aren't that many choices. These are the 3 best that we have seen. And the 2 on the left, the Metal Shark and the Silver Ships, are the 2 that we are the most interested in. Is that you, Mark? No. The Metal Shark Relentless is the boat that Lake Lenona.
I'm sorry. I just let Mark into the room. He was in the waiting room, so he might unmute himself and be able to speak here in a second.
Mark, are you there? Oh, when he joins, he can interrupt me. The Metal Shark Relentless on the left is the most recent boat that Lake Lenona has purchased. And
Sorry about that.
And our office, Nick and Doug have had a chance to go out and ride on it and see it. We have been talking with them. And the Silver Ships is the boat that all the state of New Hampshire and the state of Maine use. Most of the states around us have the states patrolling the lakes. And the Silver Ships is being used up on Lake Winnipesaukee. Nick and Doug are planning to go up there and ride in one of their boats. The costs are very similar. Once we get them all outfitted the same, they should both come in around 150. And there's not to this point, I don't think that we are, one or the other would do, I guess is what I have to say. It probably has more to do with shipping schedules and who can work with us, because as you can see, you have to order these a long way out.
Yeah, I mean, the build time for these boats is around 200 or 210 days for both of these vessels. And, like Marianne said, like Doug said, this is where everybody is going, and it's taken, I guess there's a learning curve to every single thing that we do, right? And we've all learned at our different time frames that modified recreational vessels, you're going to wind up buying 3 boats versus a single vessel if you had purchased an aluminum vessel on your initial purchase. And as Doug mentioned, I think it was, I don't know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, was it the New Hampshire boats that were purchased in, I don't know, 10 years ago?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and then they wound up selling that boat they bought it for 88,000. They
Yeah,
went
Nick, they bought it for,
got
I have the numbers.
50,000.
But it's,
Hey.
in 1999, they bought it for $88,000. They turned it into upgrade it this year and got back 56,000 from the manufacturer.
So, and that's locally, that's what we're seeing, right? Because Brookfield, their fireboat, which was aged for quite a long time, they wound up having resale value in that boat, and there was a hull rupture in that boat. So over time, these vessels hold their value, and we will be able to turn them over and recoup a lot of the money, a lot of the initial investments that we make. So it's really important, because right now we're looking at scrapping 2 vessels. And I just want to mention, CLA has done a tremendous job at maintaining the vessels that we have. The 2 vessels that we have that are fiberglass vessels now have lasted better than 20 years. So really, as a collaborative effort, as a collaborative organization, the 5 towns, this is a better investment, because in the end, if one of these boats is going to be turned over, someone will buy it. The resale value is very high with these vessels.
So here we are. Unfortunately, we're out of budget cycle. There was really no reason for the CLA to believe a year ago, right now, when we were making the budget for next year, that we would need another boat. We had 2 boats that were good. We were running 2 boats on the weekends on patrol and 1 during the week, and then we had an environmental boat. While we had watched the problems on the lake go up and up, they hadn't gotten to the point of almost catastrophe, which is what we had this summer, or as people keep calling it, the wild, wild west. So we're down 2 boats. We need 2 boats. And we believe it is our responsibility to be good stewards of the town's money. And the best way to be a good steward is to buy the boats that are most appropriate for the lake and will give the best return for your money. And that would be to buy 2 aluminum hull boats. They're $150,000 a piece. This slide says here that what we're asking each town for is $60,000. But today the CLA decided and voted to put up to $50,000 of its own capital reserve fund in, therefore for each town would only be required to put in 50. So there would be 6 people or 6 organizations going in. So that you know where we are, I can walk you through the other towns. I can also tell you that in terms of our funds, first of all, you should know that we don't have any money that's not given to us by the towns or First Light. That's how we work, and we don't have the ability to get money anywhere else. So just so you understand that that's the setup. We have $85,000 in our capital reserve fund at this time. We think that we can take 50, well, we know we can take 50 out right now. We have two things that will probably need money out of our capital reserve fund within the next year. And one of those is the docks in Sherman that are falling apart. They were given to us. They were hand-me-down. We've already rebuilt them once. We keep putting it off. They need to be rebuilt. That will be about $20,000. And then we also have a barge that's our workboat that we put all the buoys in and out. So we'll be taking them out starting next week and putting them back in next spring. We took one of the old patrol motors off of one of those boats that failed this year and put that on the Ark. The probability that we'll have to replace that engine is pretty high, and that would be $20,000. So that would make us, from our 80, that would take us to a -5, but we have $7,500 in this year's budget to go into the capital fund. In addition, we have $140,000 in our unassigned funds, but that is our savings account. And we don't want to have to go back to the towns and ask for money again. That's only about 3 months of operating expenses, and we shouldn't take it any lower. We have gone to every town. We've gone to every town several times. We were at New Milford last night. New Milford Town Council has voted to approve the $60,000, up to $60,000 for this. And they don't need to go to a Board of Finance. Well, we met with Board of Finance tonight while we were doing this. And that town council amount has been approved, dependent upon the other towns matching. New Fairfield, we've met with twice, and they are in favor of the project, but are waiting to see what other towns give us. We've met with Sherman, and we've met with their Board of Selectmen. We're meeting with their Board of Selectmen again. They are also in favor of it, but they are also sitting and waiting to see what the other towns want to do. We have talked to Danbury. They are at this time telling us that they do not have any funding to do this. We have also approached First Light and asked them to provide funding. In the past, First Light had a grant program. In fact, the aluminum boat on Lake Lenona was purchased partially from a grant by First Light. That grant program is no longer in place, but we have asked them to consider bringing it back out and helping us to fund these boats. We know that this is a very hard time for the towns, for every town, and it's not our choice to be here out of budget cycle. However, we feel it's an absolute emergency to provide public safety on the lake next year. We have to have more than 1.5 boats. And we feel that the best use of the town's money is to move to these better boats that are built for what we need them for, that will last longer and give you a significantly ROI on your investment.
Mary Ann, can I just say one other thing?
Absolutely.
So I've been working on the lake for 13 years. You know, when Mary Ann talks about return on investment, and, you know, I hate to say that, you know, I know that this needs to be our focus, and, you know, I'm respectful of the amount of money that the towns provide to keep people safe. But this is just like any other recreational area or a busy area in any part of the town. I have been to plane crashes in Sherman, fuel spills in Brookfield, boating accidents all over the lake, fuel spill last year with a sinking boat in New Fairfield, gentleman that broke his back in New Milford. If we do not have the proper equipment to get to these people or these situations in a reasonable amount of time, we're not only talking about money, you know, we're talking about lives or quality of lives that are lost because we weren't available. That's terrible for us and not good for the towns. And well, I don't think we think about that a lot, you know, and I'm not even talking about supporting the EMS or the fire departments around. I worked a brush fire last year in New Milford over at Dykes Point. You can't imagine how many people wanted to come over and sightsee for that, you know, recreational boaters that wanted to get close to the islands to see the firefighters at work, which interfered with their job and then, you know, put themselves in jeopardy and they didn't even know it. So as much as we talk about money here, I feel like I just wanted to remind everybody that the Marine Patrol is not out here to get rich. We're out here because we ourselves are recreational users of the lake. We love the lake. Most of us live on the lake or near the lake. And in our free time, whatever free time we have, we're out there as well. So I don't like to talk about money as much as I also need, you know, feel the need to talk about public safety and making sure that we're considering the fact that if we don't have the proper equipment to get where we need to be, then all of us are kind of in jeopardy. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Do you all have any questions of us?
Sure, Glenn Rooney here. Nick, to come back to your statement, I think Brookfield is a good neighbor of the lake. I believe we spent $300,000 on a fireboat for the lake community without any support from any other town. We took it upon ourselves to pay that bill. It was a big bill to pay. So when you talk about money in the way you just did, we take value of life very seriously. We put a lot of money in to be the good neighbor on the lake. So I think when you put that out there, it hits home, but nobody's put forth any more money than Brookfield has on the lake for safety. I know it's not under your purview as a patroller, but as a neighbor to the lake community, not one town has put up more in this type of service than Brookfield.
No, you know,
that's
and I would also say that, you know, Jeff Dunkerton, who's the assistant chief there at the Brookfield Fire Department, is one of our patrolmen, and I can't tell you how much, you know, the incident that I responded to with the gentleman who had broken his back in New Milford, Jeff and his guys came out, and we can't thank Brookfield enough. You know, you guys have the forward thinking, and you know what is needed on the lake. You don't have, there's nobody out there that has a vessel like you, and we appreciate the fact that that you've invested in the lake, not only for Brookfield but for the entire lake, because you know these are mutual aid calls. We're going to call on. I'm calling on Brookfield. You know, before in fact, I kind of got in trouble that day because I knew that we needed a vessel that had a bow that was able to drop down, so we didn't have to lift the victim onto a recreational type vessel, right? We needed the bow to be opened up so we could float him on to the Brookfield boat. And, you know, honestly, the New Milford FD was not happy about that. That chief thought that it should have been his call. Jeff and his guys responded. I don't want anybody to have any misconception of what I was stating.
Okay.
Our job is to make sure that everybody is safe. You know, that's something that we are charged with as an organization, as representatives of the 5 towns and Candlewood Lake Authority. And the collaboration that we have with Brookfield, I don't think it can be matched. I reached out to Sherman FD, and I spoke to Jeff to have mutual aid training, collaborative training for marina fires, missing persons, drowning procedures. So we are looking to be collaborative, and we just want to make sure that when we are involved in these types of situations that we are able to cover the entirety of the lake.
Right.
And, you know, I hope I didn't misrepresent saying
no, we're good. We're
we needed
good.
the money, but We very much appreciate Brookfield's, and the value you have in the lake and the investment that you have in.
Okay.
And,
Here's our struggle right now as a board of finance. And my board can chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, is we went through a budget season where we approved money without the town people being able to vote. This is an out of cycle expense. So again, we're being put into a spot that we didn't know about out of budget. We have had many discussions around spending money within our budget without having the town have a say, and we're out of cycle. Now, Danbury saying no puts more burden on the rest of our towns as well.
Well, can I interrupt? I'm sorry, none of the towns are going to put money in if Danbury doesn't approve. Every town who is going to make any type of motion is making their motion contingent upon Danbury and every other town kicking in. So you would not be left out being the only people, or you and one other town being the only people to fund anything.
So why haven't we looked at possibly paring down to one boat? You use your 50,000 in capital, that brings it down to 17,000 per town. And then we can put it into a budget cycle process of the town people can vote on the next boat. I mean, instead of us looking at 60,000, we can look at $17,000 then, get a boat on order, possibly if the board decides it, lower expense on all towns during this out of cycle thing, and then bring it up a year from now possibly and say, hey, you know what, we need another boat. Maybe technology changes, we have a different way of patrolling, I don't know, but why can't we take this in stages instead of a whole nut that right now I don't think many towns can afford? Otherwise you would have got to buy in right away.
Well, frankly, we need to have 2 boats next year to have safety. So if we only get enough money for 1 aluminum hull boat, we'll have to go buy 2 used recreational boats. It's just not safe to be out there next year without having 2 new boats of one type or another. And believe me, we understand what we're asking for. We didn't really want to be here. We didn't anticipate that our boats would die over this summer of running them like crazy all over the lake. We would have asked for it during a budget cycle. And we're kind of in the same spot you are. We can't make money, and we're just asking you to help us. And I do understand what you're saying, but we can't have just 1 boat. We have to have 2 boats, and we're really trying to make it the best long-term decision.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mark. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
No.
Okay.
No, you first.
I don't know if I missed a part of the presentation or if we even tried. Do we have a quote on, and I'm not a boat mechanic, but engine replacement and hull replacement? Is that even an option for the 2 current boats in the fleet? One maybe more so than the other that offsets us to another season?
Doug, would you like to answer that?
Well, sure. I actually am a boat mechanic and have been working on the lake for well over 20 years in automotive before that. This is, I can answer this a couple of different ways. It would really be a compromise.
Well, no, Doug, can you speak to the 2 boats that we took out, whether or not we could fix them and bring them back in?
Okay, well, this is the thing with recreational boats. There really isn't a repair that we can do that would be a safe and reliable way of fixing either one of the boats that are now out of service. One's a 93, one's a 97. These boats take on water. They have failed this year because one of the boats was taken out of patrol use and we were using it as an environmental boat. So the answer to the hull section is no. You can always get a replacement motor. Replacement motors are extremely expensive. We can repair them We've already done major maintenance on them in the past, but once you get to a 4,000 or 5,000 hour life on that motor, it becomes undependable. So if you're just putting money into them, anything can happen, and it's basically just throwing out what you've just invested in that. You could replace them, but we don't have the hulls to replace them on. And we've come to a point in this lake where we have a different use. These guys are responding to many more things than they ever did before. Many different types of calls. Most all the recreational boats aren't capable of safely towing other boats. They're not designed for that. They're basically designed to tow people with tubes. A lot of times we're really just trying to get people to a dock, to a place. And I didn't realize until the past couple of years how often that our patrol officers do get into situations where you can't drive away from someone. You have to actually move the boat with a family in it or whatever. So a lot of the use has changed on the boat, on the lake. And these newer style boats are really what needs to be replaced. I look at it as, you know, I grew up in Brookfield, so I've been on a lake for most of my life. 64 years old I am, so I've been on a lake for 60 years. The whole entire lake has changed, and this has been going on a while. COVID just tipped the scale right and finished these boats off that we were just trying to build some funds up and do this in a more realistic manner.
Eileen, I think the answer is that we will try to get whatever money we can to sell any parts of those boats we can, but they've really been run into the ground.
And the use of it has also changed. So the answer moving forward is this is the type of boat we need to be replacing it with. I mean, sure, when I grew up in Brookfield, half of the roads were plowed with pickup trucks and plows. I mean, nowadays that would never fly. It's a whole different environment. As far as the fireboats go, the fireboats are fabulous. I've been on your fireboat. These boats are used 400 plus hours a year. And your fireboat, I would say, it has to respond to a call. When it has to respond to a call, it has to be reliable. It has to get there, and it has to have the capability of, what the needs are on the lake now. And it's much different than it was. Brookfield's fireboat's fabulous. Sherman does have a new fireboat. Danbury is got one on order. As a matter of fact, it's what I'm told is the silver ship. I don't know how that all got ordered, but they're doing that most of the time. 90% of the time, these boats are sitting on lifts or sitting on docks, waiting for an emergency situation. Patrol boats are used on a daily basis. They're used well over 400 hours a year. These guys are in them for 6-hour shifts. We have to patrol at nights now. They have to be in a much safer craft, like Nick was stating before. So the answer to your question actually is no, the boats that we have really can't be repaired. I've been putting Band-Aids on them for a couple seasons now. And the engines also this year pushed it over the top.
It's a good question. It's fine. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Mark, you on?
Thank you. So, I know you say you understand our budget season versus now. You're looking for new boats that are 8 times the cost of the boats you've been using. That to me is new equipment, better equipment, which I understand your need, but that's stuff these are major expenditures. By the way, when did these boats become unrepairable or unusable? Does anybody have an answer for that?
Can I ask you a question, Nick? Did you just say that these boats are 8 times the cost of what we were paying for the other boats?
I said that.
The last boat that we bought new was the Robalo. It was 80,000. So these boats are.
I know, but you bought a 99 Aquasport this year or last year. That's a $25,000 boat. I was basing it off of that.
Oh, well,
So, that's a 20-year boat that we got a great deal on. It's a completely different. And I
I don't
understand.
know how much, if you got a great deal, I don't know what you paid for it. I just looked up online and what they were going for. Now, I'm just stating a fact that these are more expensive than what you have now. I understand the need for it. I do. But that to me is a budgetary, during a budget cycle issue. There's not money in our budget for anything. We are, like most towns, bare bones, and I'm sure you guys understand that. But my question was, when did we lose or know we lost these boats, the two
You want me
boats
to-
this year?
You want me to answer that, Marion?
Sure.
First of all, the first boat went out in June, and that was a boat that was a retired patrol boat, and we were using it for environmental and for our lake authority purposes.
Yep.
For equipment and
Understood.
facilities. The next one was a backup boat, and we were running 4 boats this year because of the whole COVID situation. We could only put one
Understood.
officer in, so the next
Heard
boat went
that.
out a month later. So
July.
yes.
And but it's now October, and this is the first time I'm here. I know it takes a while to get everything in order for which type of boat you want.
Sure, we've been
But I would
working
like
on
to-
this and uncovering a lot of information since the middle of the summer.
We've been trying to put together what the best situation is for everyone.
I think we're at a point now where, in my opinion, and my board can come along or not come along, is you need 2 boats. If we say no, you can't get any boats, it sounds like. Danbury hasn't committed, and unless Danbury commits, nobody's going to go forward on this.
I wasn't done yet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I know it's getting late. I just have a couple more, and I'll make them quick. On a weekend, it appears to me you have 4 patrol officers available on any given day in a weekend, 4 boats, 1 man per boat. You have 4 patrol officers available?
That's
true.
That's how we started the season off, was we run officers in tandem. So we always have tandem officers. We because of COVID, we started off with 1 officer per boat, boats running in tandem, as opposed to 2 officers per boat.
Yeah. So if you had 2 officers per boat, you were running 2 boats. Is that correct? Or you were still running 4? I didn't seem to me that you had 4 boats prior to this year.
No, prior to this year, we ran 2 boats on the weekend, 2 officers on each boat. Is that what
Okay.
you're asking?
So, yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking. So now that we know that masks are appropriate for people to work, do we have an option to go back to 2 officers per boat with a mask, with proper protocols?
We have
In July, we went back to having 2 officers per boat. But in order to adequately cover this body of water, you can't have just 2 guys in 1 boat. Anybody that lives along the shoreline will turn around and be like, I have not seen a patrol boat in 6 hours. And I'm looking outside. And
But that was true before this year, right, sir?
I'm sorry?
That was true before this. That was true before this year. That you were understaffed or however people wouldn't see you guys for multiple hours at a time. That was true before this year.
So as a general rule, in regular times, we run 3 different vessels during the entire day with 2 people per boat, and they overlap in 6-hour shifts. So 9 to 3, 12 to 6. And then we have another boat that runs up until 9 or 10, 11, which overlaps what we call the B shift that starts at 3 o'clock or 11 o'clock.
So is the mask option available to get, then buying 1 more boat, you'd have 3 boats patrolling with two men, because I understand you can't go out alone. I get that. Is that an option even?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Sure.
Obviously, we can only do what the towns will fund us to do. It's our responsibility to come to you and tell you what we think needs to be done to provide adequate public safety. It's your job to tell us what the towns are willing and able to bear. We obviously have to run whatever we can, given the money that we have. And if we only get enough money to buy one more boat, then the decision would have to be made. Do you buy one good boat that will last a long time, or do we try to find 2 used boats to get us through? And that would be the decision that would have to be made.
And I held no animosity towards you for doing your job. I, however, feel like I'm doing mine by asking these questions. I'm not prejudging.
I'm sorry, I hope that am not implying that I don't understand what your job is. I do. And I understand that this is a tough time. I would not ever have chosen to be coming to the town out of budget cycle, to be asking for money. That's not something that we want to do. And we are coming here only because we have to. And we could have been coming asking for just a little bit of money for 2 boats. We felt it was our responsibility to show you what we think is the best long-term way to spend your money. If that's not what we can do, that's not what we'll be doing right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I only have one other question, only because I don't know anything about the CLA or enough about it. Is there any way we can charge for out-of-state permits or out-of-town permits to get some money back from these people that use the lake, that use your services, probably more than the 4,000 boats that are on it that live here?
Well,
take that
that's
one.
a long-term issue. Short-term, no. Long-term.
Understand it's not viable for this.
Right, I understand that. And, you know, the way it is set up right now, the 5 towns are supposed to pay. I think as more and more people are using the lake that are away from here, it's obviously something that the towns could take up. But that would be the towns would have to take it up with DEEP or whomever. We have no power.
Right. Let me jump in here, Mark. The town has gone through our local legislators. Steve Harding has been very helpful here. We have every year gone to the state and asked them to impose a fee on those boats coming from out of state at Latins Cove and in New Fairfield, charge a fee so you can use it to support the lake. They refuse to do it.
And as I understand it, if they were to charge a fee, that would go back to the state.
Yeah, they would probably take the money and not give it to us.
That's a good point. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else on the Board of Finance have a question?
Can I make just one point? The Board of Selectmen had approved this up to $60,000. The CLA has found money which would reduce our contribution to, I believe it's 50,000. And we had suggested that we use funding from the capital non-recurring fund, where we do have over $400,000 that is free from projects that have been completed, and we did not expend the full amount. So we would not have to go into our reserves or any additional appropriation from the town. It would be a transfer from, our suggestion is from capital non-recurring.
Can I ask some quick questions? And I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible, because I have very little knowledge of CLA, but your funding primarily comes from the towns already. As I understand, Brookfield's already this year, part of the budget, giving you $86,000. Of the funds that you receive from the towns, what portion of that is set aside for new equipment and things? Or is it typical for you to come to the towns to say, hey, we now need a boat, please give us money for a boat?
Our budget for this year, for example, has $7,500 being put away into our capital account. To give you an idea of that, we have $85,000 in our capital account right now. If the lake hadn't changed, and the lake has been changing, and COVID has blown it up, that would be enough to buy one more boat if we were still just going to run 2 patrols on the lake on the weekends, and we would be fine. We would be taking our capital. So
Great.
we were funding ourselves.
I totally get it. Totally get it. So then now with the rest of your budget, I'd imagine you have some overages, you have some underages. is there kind of an unassigned fund balance?
Yes,
you guys also have?
we have an unassigned fund balance at this time of $140,000, which is about 3 months of operating expenses. And that's our only savings account.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we have been advised in talking with the auditor that we really shouldn't go much below that.
Understand. So, and now, do you guys hold any debt? You don't need to be specific, but do you
No.
typically say, hey, why don't we? So
We are not allowed to hold debt. We cannot borrow and we cannot hold debt.
okay, so then the towns are forced to hold the debt and just give
Exactly.
you what
The
you
way
need.
that the ordinances are set up is that each town is to pay 1/5 of our budget every year. And that's the way it is set up.
Okay.
Okay.
So Ricky, if I can just jump in real quick, it's no doubt in my mind that the CLA over the last 10, 15 years should have probably been asking the towns for a reserve to be held for purchases of boats. But in their effort to keep their charges to the town low, they didn't put enough money or a request in there. And I
Yeah.
bet you 10 to 1, we're going to get requests starting forward to at least reserve funds so we don't get a big hit.
Yeah, but now we're being asked during a very tough year to make up for a very big hit. And I understand no one foresaw this coming, but
Well,
now in hindsight, you could always, chalk it up to poor planning or whatever, but it just makes it very difficult now to kind of swallow the cost is my point. So
Well,
can we make sure that going forward that we do plan for
Absolutely, we understand that, but one of the reasons you need to understand that one of the reasons this is such a big ask is because we have to meet the lake usage as it is now. And we can't run the same number of patrols that we used to. It's just not adequate for the number
No,
of.
I understand, but you had to have known that a boat from 1993 wasn't going to last forever and you're going to need a replacement.
This is true, but we anticipated when we were making our budget last October, we anticipated that our boats would make it through the summer and that we would have enough money to get one more patrol boat. We now know we need more than one more patrol boat. We need at least 2 more patrol boats because the lake usage has changed. It's a totally different lake out there. Now, should we have been thinking about having more than 2 boats on the weekends 2 years ago? Probably, but if we had come to you 2 years ago and said that lake usage is going up, you would have said, handle it. This year, it was crazy.
I don't think we would have, because I think the assessment that would have gone up would have been nominal compared to what your ask is now. And I think that we would have completely accepted that.
Okay, well.
But Ricky, can I cut in for 1 second?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, ma'am. You just said you had in the budget for, oh, thank you. You had in the budget for this year 1 new boat.
No, we had in the budget this year, $7,500 we were adding to our reserves, which would have meant we would have had more than $90,000 at the end of the year, which would have been enough to buy 1 new recreational vehicle. But we're moving
boat.
So we're moving from recreational boats to purpose-built boats, and we're moving from 2 patrols on the weekend to 4 patrols. So it's a little bit confusing because we're changing types of boats and we're changing number of boats.
Just wanted to clear that up, and you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, it's a little confusing.
Again, return on investment, I think what we're talking about here is, you being able to look out by Echo Bay or by down the hatch and see a patrol boat there the majority of the time. Where what you used to see or what you would have previously seen are people that are buzzing homes and getting too close to the gas docks and blasting out of down the hatch and disrupting recreational residential use of the lake. And again, return on investment, we're talking about being in the area within a few minutes versus 20 minutes and us showing up and calling dispatch in Hartford saying they're GOA, gone on arrival. Apologize, we couldn't find them because it took too long to get there. We're going to be there for you and for your residents. And presumably by having that high level of presence, there's going to be less calls that come into town hall complaining about what's happening on the lake.
Hey, Steve, so, in May, we went through the capital budget very in depth and we pushed things off, and if this were on it, it would have been on the list. This sounds like a public safety issue. It sounds like a public nuisance issue, and it sounds like a good citizenship issue. Is there something on the current capital budget that can be delayed and put this in its place so it's not new money, or where would you rank this in terms of the capital projects we have going on? 50,000.
I think this is a critical need of the lake. The number of complaints we've gotten this year, I would say, has gone up exponentially from last year. Last year I got 2 or 3 complaints. This year I've gotten dozens of complaints about noise, about people just behaving, frankly, I'll call it very bluntly, like animals out in these lakes. We've had 40 and 50 boats rafting together with no masks, no separation. And these guys are really pressed to stay on top of all of this. It's changed in the last couple of years. I've been going on the lake now for 24 years with my boat, and it's just a whole different animal out there. So to answer your question, since we do have funding in capital non-recurring that is not being dedicated to any other purpose, we've done projects, we've come in under budget, I would suggest we use that.
No, I think Dan was asking, what are you willing to give up on the list, Steve?
That's exactly
Not extra money, because you're going to ask us for 100,000 more tonight on another project.
Yeah,
so
I don't have anything in there that hasn't already been approved and been started. We don't have a capital budget this year. Remember, we didn't approve one.
What are we willing to give up then, Steve? Because we can't keep going to these things. We're building a $63 million school. All this money can go to really strong use.
I would.
What are
I
you
don't
going to
have
give
an
up?
answer for you right now, Dan. I would have to look at the projects that we're doing, but I think the suggestion that I made is a reasonable one. That would be taking money from projects that we've underspent on. We've done a better job with the budgets than we thought the original funding was for.
So then you would be willing to sacrifice the Greenway tonight. That 100,000 for this is what you're saying. So if we were to approve this,
absolutely not what I'm saying, Glenn, at all.
we're not an endless pot of money, Steve. We put forth the budget this year without the taxpayers being able to vote on anything. We put forth the money that pushed a lot of people to the brink without a chance to vote. And now we're bringing in all these new things that nobody had a chance to vote on. This money, any excess money that we have in capital, should be used for town capital items, or any surplus we have in the budget should go back to the taxpayers because they didn't have the right to vote this year. Danbury is not even on board yet in this process. And here we are looking at spending 60,000. I threw out a suggestion of bringing it down to one boat, 18,000 we could discuss, and that got poo-pooed. We need 2. Then we circled back on a whole different tangent. But when I brought it up, the statement was, we need 2 or nothing. So
Glenn, can I interrupt for a second?
no, it's my turn right now because we spent a lot of time on this.
Well, I'm just not sure that I made myself clear about Danbury.
Is Danbury in or out?
They are still on the fence. Can I tell you that last night's approval by New Milford, which I would expect anybody to say, is that they approved spending up to 60,000 contingent upon all the towns coming in with the same amount of money. We're not asking any town to stick their nose out any farther than anybody else. If 4 towns say we'll give you $50,000 contingent upon everybody paying and Danbury refuses, we're not going anywhere. I just don't want you to think that we think that some of the towns should bear more of the cost than the others.
Ben, sorry, this is Joan Archer. There's one thing you just did it. So if you did want to go with one boat, instead of it being 17, we would need some money set to keep in our capital reserve to buy a used fourth boat. So we would not be able to put the full $50,000 into one boat. We can put $50,000 into 2 new boats. Does that make sense?
I'm lost. What if we say no? What if this Board of Finance voted no? Where would y'all be?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just, and I know that I probably taken off too much of your time, but I'm just going to say for just to give it a little bit of consideration, if this lake becomes unusable, what is the cost to the taxpayers and small businesses of Brookfield? Because, and I'm not talking about people that are outside of Brookfield, but even people that are going out to lunch or getting lunches to take out on the lake, buying, PFDs, boat equipment, maybe new things for their vessels, and going out enjoying the lake. If you take this recreational gem that you have and you make it unusable for the residents of Brookfield and people outside, this is probably a cost neutral item for Brookfield unless you don't fund it. Because if you do not fund it, the people will not come to Brookfield to launch their boats, to keep them at Echo Bay, to shop in the area, to go to Down the Hatch, to buy the fuel. And you get what I'm saying, right? It's a minimal investment. I know what you're saying.
I get what you're saying. I've been a resident of Brookfield for 54 years. I've been going to the Hatch for 30 of them.
So you know what the value of the lake is. And if it becomes, listen, I live in New Fairfield. I live on the lake. I don't even want to go out there right now on the weekends. I don't want to do it. I think that's a detriment to my town, to whether that's Chatterton, and I get gas at Echo Bay as well. It just is. I'm not going out there, so I'm not burning fuel. I would be out there if it was a reasonable place to be, but it's not. It's not right now because you don't have the presence, you don't have the impact from the Marine Patrol to make this habitable recreational area for your residents. You just don't.
I'll be honest, I don't take my boat on Candlewood anymore. I go to Lilinona. It's just too crowded and too crazy, and I have little kids. I don't know that the Marine Patrol is going to be able to fix it. What's that?
I said, I'm so sorry to hear that,
It's a shame, but I don't.
It's a bummer.
The problem is greater than the Marine Patrol, but I do appreciate what you're doing. But to bring this back, look, if you can find something that we can save a concrete $50,000 on, I'm all for putting $50,000. We got to support these people. I get it. And you made your case about needing the new boats. I understand that.
Control of this.
In my mind, I'd put the $50,000 up and be the first town to put it up. And if they use our money and no other towns kick in, well, that's the other town's loss. But we got to do what's right for the lake. But we need Steve, or I would need Steve, to come up with somewhere where we have this money. It doesn't take it from our taxpayers.
Yeah, Mark, I'm suggesting that we do the same thing here that we did with the fireboat. The fire department put up some money and we put up the rest of it. And we use money from other projects where we underspent the budget. That's what we did with the fireboat.
But
that's what
I'm suggesting. Have those?
Am I right?
Can't get on board with that, and I don't think Dan can either. What we're talking about is that money is sitting there for us for an emergency process. What are you going to give up? That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this constitutes an emergency to pull from our contingency. Not right now.
I'm sorry. Could you say that again, Ricky? I couldn't hear you.
I said for me, this doesn't constitute an emergency that we need to pull out of our contingency. It's either got to come out of somewhere else or one for one, but to come out of contingency for me, it's a hard no.
I didn't suggest contingency. I suggested capital non-recurring.
But that's sort of like a contingency for us to use for projects, Steve. It's
like
where it's one of the things we fall back on a project that's critical to us that we can pull on and not affect the taxpayers.
Right. And my opinion is this is one of those projects. I'm guessing others on this board don't feel the same.
Can I just say, New Milford Town Council, I mean, all the municipalities are going through the same thing right now with this being a very tough financial year. New Milford Town Council unanimously approved this last night because they recognized the revenue that comes from the lake and the value of the lake and protecting it. In terms of the overcrowding, you know, patrol is not going to fix that, but we are working on a long-term plan with DEP to try to address some of those issues. But it's, you know, it's difficult to move forward when we are, you know, we just had a board meeting right before this, and we talked about how the 2017 Robalo already needs some repairs. So, you know, we're trying to start getting ahead of things. And I understand, you know, you don't want to pull this out of contingency, but this is a health and safety issue for next summer.
So let me ask another question then. How much does each town give to the lake right now? We gave, Ricky said, where'd you get the 86,000 from, Ricky, the budget?
It's all the same.
Okay, so what do other towns give in this process of, we gave 86, is everybody at the same level of 86?
Yes.
Yeah,
What portion?
I was gonna say, the way the budget works is, the agreement between the towns is that the 3 towns that come closest to our budget request, those get averaged together, and all 5 towns are required to pay the same amount. So everybody pays the same.
So what portion of that from each town goes to capital, and can we reduce your budget by 10,000 or 15,000 every year for the next 5 years? So if we decide next year to give you, say, 25,000, so we give you 60,000 next year, but we approve this boat, we only pay you 60,000 for the next 5 years.
That's why we're in the situation we're in, coming in off cycle. We need to start, you know, putting more money in capital so that we don't come here off cycle.
There's no budge anywhere. Every time I throw out a budge, there's no budge. There's no give backs. There's nothing.
Well, I mean, we have been doing that. We have reduced service in order to meet budget requirements for the past 10 years. And, you know, I would just say, and I never want to overstep my bounds, but, you know, I mean, I live on the lake as well. I mentioned that before. If this lake dried up, I would not be here. And that's really what we're talking about here. So you are, and not you personally or Brookfield in isolation, we, as the 5 towns and myself as a resident of one of those towns, are risking this lake drying up. I mean, 2 of us on this call have already said that we don't use the lake on the weekends. And you know what? Thursday and Friday are questionable for me. And if it becomes Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the weekend for me, I'm out of here. I'll move further north if I can, or find some place that is private that I can go to. But what we're talking about here, by not funding it, and I'll disagree respectfully with many people on this call today. I can make an impact with the Marine Patrol that we have today with our 30 guys by maintaining a presence in your environment, in your town, in your body of water. I will be there to stop people and mitigate the bad behavior before it happens. And I will turn people away, but I can't do it right now, so I don't have the equipment. I mean, honestly, and we have mentioned this before on other calls, if Brookfield PD needs a new police car or another police car, do you go out and buy a used Lincoln Continental and put lights on top of it and have it, you know, drive up and down Federal, right? You'd get laughed at. You would. We're talking about the same thing. If I'm here, and whether, you know, your PD is on Federal Road or I am outside of Echo Bay or down the hatch, listen, I guarantee you, anybody that's even had a beer and a meal or a beer and no meal coming out of the hatch, if I'm sitting outside, they're not blasting out through the wake zone. They're just not. I'm promising you, if this money doesn't come around, we just can't be everywhere at any one time. And there are going to be people whether that be residents, property damage, or, damage that winds up being physically, acquired from an accident or something. And I'm not being dramatic about it. We all know about the accidents that have happened on Candlewood. Fortunately, they're few and far between, right? The major things. But we're talking about these nuisance items that you get called in. There's no impact unless there is equipment out there.
Mr. Mellis, if I may.
Yeah.
Could I just add
If
something
I
to
may,
that?
we were in the middle of a discussion with Brookfield has a Board of Finance and a Board of Selectmen run by Mr. Dunn. We were in the middle of a discussion with Mr. Dunn on how we fund this. So maybe we could continue on that track and maybe we find out a way to fund this. We never got to finish our discussion on our end here.
I'm sorry,
So,
I apologize. Just passionate about it. And
I see that, and I'm passionate about our first responders as well, as are many of the people on our board. But we have to have a discussion with our first selectman on how we would do this if we're even going to move forward. And so I'd like to return to that discussion if we could.
absolutely right. My apologies.
Nope, no need. So, Ricky, I think you and I are on the same page that I don't want it to come out of some sort of savings, whether it be capital non-recurring or rainy day, fund. I'd like to find some capital project that we may not need that would fund $50,000. Steve, you don't have any options?
Off the top of my head, no. We'd have to go back and look at all the capital projects we're doing and then make a decision. But I think, and I'll be blunt here, all of the capital projects we've approved in the past have been thoroughly vetted by both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance in great detail. We've cut out capital projects in past budgets that we knew we needed to do, that we absolutely needed to do, but we just couldn't bring them forward because it would just increase taxes too much. We all know that. We've been doing it together for 4 or 5 years now. I don't think that the capital projects that we've put forward over the past few years are projects that we want to abandon. We need to move forward. I think I've suggested a very reasonable way to fund $50,000 if the CLA puts up the $10,000 for each town, if they put up 50,000. And it is the way that we funded our fireboat. And no one had an issue with that then. It seemed to be an appropriate use of funding that we have been very careful. We've saved money. We've come in under budget on items. And now you're asking me to cut out capital projects that this board spent literally weeks approving.
There's two differences on the fireboat and this boat. We were approached 2 years prior on the fire department's asks. As of the beginning of this summer, the CLA was not even considering the aluminum boats. They were thinking of the fiberglass boats, and one at that. So I understand the need to double up. That's fine, but they weren't even. They're basically upgrading just because they feel like they can. That's kind of how it comes off. I know it's a better boat, but why wasn't this being planned for 4 or 5 years ago? I understand that, however long of the period that they've been saving up for it, they've been looking at only fiberglass issues, but why now, when you have to double up the amount of boats needed, do you decide to also upgrade them?
Yeah, I agree with you, but
and now they're making it an emergency on our part. That's what's unfair on this.
Wait a minute, but when we bought the fireboat, they came to us, they were looking at their boat and they put it back in service. They did weld it. It broke, if you remember, in the June, July time period.
But they also did have a plan for it. They had it planned in their capital.
Right.
Yes, it broke sooner than we wanted to, but we came to an agreement and a solution on that.
Right.
But it was always planned that was going to be the boat that they were looking for. They didn't all of a sudden upgrade it to something far beyond their original request.
Yeah, I can't talk to the planning or lack of planning on the part of the CLA coming forward to this. I agree, it would have been much better if we had a plan like the fire departments, like the police department comes to us with their capital needs going out 10 years. We don't have that right now. But this is a similar circumstance in that their boat broke well before they thought they would need to buy a new boat. And they came to the town, they did their homework, they did a good job. And they came to the town in an off-budget cycle and asked for money. And because of the lead time to build that boat, which was 6 months, and we wanted to get it into service the next spring, so we weren't without a boat, we approved it. This is very similar in that circumstance, in my opinion. People may disagree. There was no plan on the part of CLA to have 2 boats break this year and be unusable. Now, should we have been planning much further ahead? I agree 100%. Shame on us. We all should have been looking at it much more carefully. And I think we should do that going forward with the CLA and with Lake Lenona to make sure that we're giving them the funding and the reserves so that we don't get hit with big expenses in the middle of a budget year. I hate spending money in the middle of a budget year, especially under the circumstances we have now with coronavirus. But this is my opinion. I think this is very similar to the fireboat. I agree with you, Ricky, 100%. There wasn't a lot of planning, as much planning as I would have liked, or anyone would have liked, I think. But we do find ourselves in a position that they had 2 boats that went down that they did not think that they thought could survive another year, right? Or maybe 2.
It sounds like one of them is just being used as an environmental boat now.
Yeah, well, they're using the environmental boat as a patrol boat now, right? So I see it as similar to the fireboat, some different circumstances. I would much prefer this to be in our normal budget cycle. And I think this board and the Board of Selectmen, if we come to next February, March timeframe, we'd absolutely want to put more money into the budget so that we have this and it goes out to the voters and everybody gets to approve it. We're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here. And this is, again, my opinion. I think the safety, what's going on in the lake right now is so different than even 4 years ago. To pull back on our ability to patrol rather than increase our ability to patrol is going to cause us huge problems. The lake is becoming, in my opinion, unusable on the weekends for recreational boaters from Brookfield. With the wake boats that are putting up huge wakes so kids can, wakeboard behind them, to the PWCs that love to jump over those wakes, it's a whole different environment than we've had in the past. And again, my suggestion would be to approve this with the caveat that all other towns agree to fund this. I don't think 3 or 4 towns should fund this on their own. I think all 5 towns have both the responsibility and the duty to make sure that the lake is safe.
Anyone else?
I guess I've been very quiet here. I'm a resident of Brookfield for now 35 years.
Whoa. We can't have public comment. Where are we at here?
He's part of the CLA.
Okay, all right.
And so as a member of the CLA, I really feel that this is very important for us going forward. And I would hope that if we were able to, we're going to be talking to First Light and others. And if there's a way that we can get additional funds and reduce the amount that we have to ask for each town, I think that would be what I would consider a compromise of trying to get the numbers down, but recognize that where it would have to come from is from other sources outside of the towns.
This is Eileen. I know, Joan, you had mentioned too that there are some other measures being looked at. I was just wondering, I don't want to belabor the conversation, but I'm curious, are there measures being taken to, to post more speed limits? I'm not a boater. If anything, I'm a kayaker and paddleboarder, so I'm not familiar with a lot of the lake activities, but I know it seems like everybody I talked to this summer was on a boat on the lake. So I understand the higher usage, But I'm just wondering, what are these measures that are being looked into, to either reduce the lake traffic or make it safer? I mean, to me, it's the same thing that everybody else has said. This is such a different year and budget. And, when I think of contingency, I think of, absolute emergency spends, but possibly the youth approving one boat, monies for one boat, but then what are the steps being taken to reduce these types of issues, whether it's regulations or
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so this is a task force. We are working on a plan that we are planning on presenting in January for the budget cycle that we're talking about for next year. And in these months, we did not expect to be going to public meetings every night of the week for the month of October, but that is what we are doing right now. But by January, we want to show the towns a plan for public awareness and in terms of what you're saying with the voting rules and all of that. And we're also starting a dialogue with DEP.
So Joan, and I think we also mentioned that, if you were to go and poll the marinas right now, I mean, if you tried in July to purchase a vessel, there was 0 available inventory. Every single used boat that Echo Bay and the area marinas had was sold out. Many of those people bought the boat, launched the boat, went out on the boat, did not have any of the safety equipment that they should have had, did not have a license. They didn't register their vessels. And that's what we're talking about. And this is return on investment for you.
Well, how many fines were given out on that case, and what are the fines? I mean, why don't we make it $1,000 fine and recoup a boat on? If they're not going to go out there, be prepared, fine them.
Fines go to the state.
So, like we can't change the state statute. And honestly, like many of local law enforcement, land or marine patrol, we were not stopping as many people as we could have stopped because of COVID-19, exposure to the general public and exposure to ourselves, right? So I would say that we started probably really enforcing infractions when we felt that we were at a safer level and hospital admissions were below that 1% around August. And we have now had over 100 infractions issued. Some of those infractions are multiple infractions. If we go back a couple of slides, you'll see that we did not register every single contact that we had, and we had over 670 contacts from, let's say, end of June through October. It's a tremendous amount of people that we're contacting every weekend, every week. So what are we going to do for you? If we have the equipment, we're going to stop people. We're going to turn them around. We're going to terminate voyages, and we are going to advise them, educate them on whether that be island closures or noise, whether there's an ordinance or not. I know what's inappropriate. We'll stop them before, and we'll make an impact. Like I said, this is quality of life, whether that's Arrowhead Point or Candlewood Shores, and whether Sand Island is in New Fairfield, that impacts Brookfield. So it's a collaborative, painful situation we're all in right now. And from Candlewood Lake perspective, I think that we are the people that can make an impact, the Marine Patrol right now for you.
I think this is Dan DeVore. At least speaking for me, I think I understand the need, and I understand your arguments, and I understand the problems that the Board of Finance is having. I think we're ready. I don't think there's anything else that can be shared. I think we should move to making a decision, move on. It's 10 o'clock at night.
Can I just ask the options that you're gonna? So the options are either one boat or 2 boats or 0 boats, correct?
Well, I think we're just talking about money. We don't have once we give you the money, you do with it what you want, right? I think.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that if we find if we were to find the money somehow, I'm giving the money, but we got to find it.
Can put forth the motion to vote on the 50,000, right? With the subsequent towns and have a vote. And if we vote no, it gets voted down, right? I mean, if it's a vote yes, it goes forward to Danbury has to be involved. I mean, I would have much rather done a step process, like I said earlier. And for me, the solutions that were thrown out there didn't seem to fit. And so if there's no solution, I feel like we can vote on it now, as far as I'm concerned. So I'll make the motion. Right? If y'all are ready to vote, are you ready to vote?
So is the motion going to be where it's coming from, or is the motion going to be
50,000? Know where it's coming from. Nope.
Okay.
Unless you want to table it to another meeting.
Nope. Nope. The recommendation from the Board of Selectmen was that it come from capital non-recurring. So that's
Go for me.
Mike, you're on mute. Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'd like a little time to figure out where we can fund this from. I can't personally get it out of the capital non-recurring fund, like Ricky. And we're gonna have a special meeting in 2 weeks. Maybe we could tag this onto that agenda.
That's a public hearing.
A couple of weeks.
That's a public hearing.
Oh.
It'll be the next meeting.
Yeah, well, you could call a meeting and have a public hearing at the same time.
All right. Well, I'm gonna agree with Mark and Ricky, and I think others that if we vote on this motion, it's going to be a no. And I'm going to throw it back to Steve to find something in the budget that can be cut, because we funded capital non-recurring almost as a contingency in May through Ricky's idea, and saying it's not out of contingency, it's out of capital non-recurring is kind of semantics. So if we can find something to replace, then that's different. But I think that the answer of this board on this specific request is clearly going to be a no. Just taking a straw poll.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So that's what we'll do. We're gonna put Steve to the task. And if he finds it of a project to go away, then a project goes away. Then we can vote on it. Is that what we're sort of in the?
I think that's the consensus.
Yeah.
Or some creative method that we haven't thought of here yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
That we can stomach.
And can we plan to vote on that by, for a part of a special meeting prior to this public hearing that we're calling?
We could have a meeting before the public hearing for, 30 minutes
Yeah, 30
beforehand.
minutes before.
That's fine.
I mean,
That's
since
fine.
we all secured the date, we can have a 30-minute meeting prior to.
Yep.
Not a problem.
Right.
I'm okay
All
with that.
Then that's where we're headed. So we're agreeing we'll have a meeting a half hour before the public hearing that we're gonna propose and make a motion on later for the 28th, right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you guys.
Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I'll make another motion that we move to put the Stillwater Greenway presentation next. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
So let's go to Greg. Greg will give an overview of what we're looking at with the Greenway.
Okay, if somebody pull that presentation up, please. It'll be very brief, I promise.
Thank you.
And this is where I find you your money.
Okay, so on August 28th, the DOT announced another round of community connectivity grants, a solicitation. And this is a grant that we previously applied for the Still River Greenway Town Hall Access Project. And if you look at my footnote 1 on the bottom of this page, this grant for which we applied, were originally declined, but then got approved for $207,000. So that's kind of the history of that. So with this new application, there is a new way by which they're going to rate these projects, and they've created 5 rating criteria, and you can read those 5 criteria. They total to 100 points. So we'll be rated against everyone else with our application, assuming we send one in. We'll have to provide letters of support, and it requires a town commitment to fund a town portion of that project. This grant will only cover construction, not engineering, for example. And the deadline is this Friday, October 16th. That's why I'm in front of you this evening. I'd like to review 2 options with you called options 2 and 3, give you an updated cost estimate, and then this project we would shoot for the construction of summer of 2021 if approved. So what's really important about this application is, and we did talk with the grantor at the DOT about this program, is we can only apply for this grant if we decline the previously approved grant for which we've been awarded $207,000. So keep that in mind as I go through this presentation. Next slide, please. So this is just 2 pages that are the website that talk about that grant announcement. And I'm not going to go through this, but this is where we go to learn about the grant and all the guidelines and all the forms we have to fill out. So page 1 just shows that announcement. And the reason why I'm showing page 2 here, if you scroll down, this is 13 pages of this grant on the homepage. And there is Brookfield's project for which we were previously approved, as well as every other town in the state. And that's that $207,000 project scope of work, again, that we were approved for over a year ago. So there we are. And then the next, so that's all for what's on the website that I'm showing you here today. So just to remind you of what we mean when we talk about options 2 and 3, if you can kind of get your bearings here, there's the 2 PTAC fields, the ball field, town hall, and we've been talking about 3 different options for this project. Option 1 was the one that was originally submitted, for which nobody, when I say nobody, neither the Board of Selectmen or the Park and Rec Department really can embrace at this point. It's because the trail went right along the east side of the lower PTAC field, right along the boundary line, sandwiched between Kids Kingdom and the lower PTAC field. I don't show that option here because that option is not acceptable to either the Board of Selectmen or the Park and Rec Commission. So when that became a reality, Steve asked for us to look at other options. We came up with option 2, which takes the trail along the west side of the lower PTAC field, hugged right along the state right-of-way line, and wraps around the ball field and into the new parking lot on Pocono Road, which is currently a gravel parking lot that this project would pave. When we looked at that option, it was much more expensive. It's a longer trail, and there's a lot of site work because of steep grades behind that lower PTAC field. So Steve asked us to look at option 3. And option 3, you can see with the dotted line, is a much shorter route, but it takes us right along the roadway behind Town Hall there, and is a much lower cost project. So when we talk about options 2 and 3, this is the 2 scenarios we're looking at. Next page, please. So let me start here by going to the right-hand column of this slide. So back in February, it was option 3 that I presented to the Board of Selectmen and they embraced because it was a lower cost option than option 2. I believe I presented that to you maybe in February or March, and it did not make the cut when it came time for the capital budget. So basically we put the project on hold. With the new grant solicitation, Steve asked us to sharpen our pencil and go back and revisit options 2 and 3. And that's what's in the center box. So in the center box are options 2 and 3. And option 2 is the preferred option by the Park and Rec Department and I believe the Board of Selectmen. Now, the reason why option 2 is much more now than it was back in February is we added a couple line items because the grant allows us to ask for up to $600,000. So we added the paving of the parking lot. You can see that $60,000 line item is the single biggest difference in option 2 than option 3. So when you run through all the numbers, the total cost for option 2 becomes $558,000. The grant, if approved, would cover $474,000, and the town contribution would be $84,000. So that is the preferred option. Again, we would have to give up the $207,000 we've already been granted for option 3 if we chose to submit an application by this Friday for option 2. So is there another slide? I think that's the end of my presentation. Maybe there's another slide. Nope, that's it.
Last page.
So that's very brief. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's where we're at 2 days before the deadline.
So what happens, we give up our $207,000, that's money in the bank right now. We're potentially getting 474, because that's the one Steve likes better, Selectmen and Parks, no, not just Steve. We don't get the 474. We don't get it, so now we don't have anything. Do we just not do the project and reapply next year for back to where we were?
Yeah, you know, we had asked the state because we underestimated the cost when they came out with these. When they come out with these grants, we didn't have the first time and this time a lot of time to do a lot of research to apply for the grant. It's about 6 weeks. So the first go around, we estimated it, and we were clearly off. But we went back to the state and said, listen, we still want to do this project. We have $207,000. Can we just change the scope of our project to add the changes that we need and increase expenses? And they said, absolutely not. You have to spend the $207,000 before you can apply for a new grant. Well, under that option, we have to put up $183,000. That didn't make a lot of sense to me when we can, if we rescind our $207,000, we then can apply for the new. It's a risk. And Mark, you caught it right away.
Steve, no, I understand all that. My question was, if we don't get any grants, if they deny us, because I agree with you. Why spend 183 when we get a better project and spend 84? I'm 100% with you. But if they deny us the 474, can we just scrap it and do it in a future year when we can reapply?
Right. We would have to just start from scratch. It's a risk we take.
But we're not committed that we have to do it.
No.
If we don't get the grant, we're not gonna do it.
I don't think if we don't get the grant, I don't think we should do it. We should wait to get another grant. And this is the sort of thing that you can get grants for.
Right, we don't have 500, and we'll have various plans ready to apply for another grant.
Right.
But we're not spending $560,000 of our own money on extending the greenway.
No way, I wouldn't support that.
Okay. Yeah, then I can be on board with this.
The $207,000 grant isn't money in the bank unless we match it, or not match it, but unless we, it's money in the bank for a project that's not fully funded. So if I remember correctly,
we did fund that.
What?
No,
we funded that 183.
We voted it down.
We voted it down. That was the first thing cut.
Yeah.
You're right.
Mark, we voted
I
it
got
down. So this is a project we voted down.
We already voted this
year's
down.
budget. It's coming back in this current year to get voted on again.
Right. We
He's
voted
right.
it down because no one was happy with the compromise plan, and we would have to pay half of it. And we said, no, let's not do it.
Right.
Let's wait and see.
Because the original thought on this project was that it was 100% grant funded. It was going to be zero cost to the town. Then
Right.
it grew to $20,000 for scoping. Then it grew, and it turned out to be $180,000. And it was in the capital budget, and it was one of the first things we cut in either March or May. I don't remember.
Correct.
So now it's coming back. It's a fine idea, but they're asking for $85,000 of new money, which I say once again, we cut it because there was other things that were more important. So why is it important now? And why should we use money that we specifically said no to and didn't put on the taxpayer? And now we're going to take it out of some other fund. So if I was on the fence on the boat, I am adamant on this one. There's no way I'm voting yes on this.
Yeah. Well, the difference here is we're putting up a lot less money, right? And more importantly, it supports the plan that everyone agrees is the best one. One of the main reasons we didn't move forward with the last one is no one was happy with it. And we thought, we don't want half a loaf. It doesn't make any sense. And so we cut it.
I'll accept that.
This is the whole loaf. So it is a little different in that way, Dan.
I'll agree with that, Steve. That's fair.
Yeah.
No, but part of the reason was we're moving forward without town voting on budgets, and we don't have this money. We didn't feel right appropriating everything. So I think that this is, again, one of those items that we're appropriating money without a vote. It does make
Well, I'd
sense.
like to hear where Steve was coming up with 84,150 then. You must have had a
Say
plan,
again,
I'm
Mark?
sure. Where were you coming up with 84,150?
We would have
What
to
was
find
that
the
coming
money.
out of?
We would have to find the money either.
Right.
Again,
I didn't know if you had already found
non-recurring.
it somewhere.
Yeah, we would have to find it. The problem here is that these grants come out with deadlines like this Friday outside of our budget year. That's the way they work. We can't control that. I wish we could. I wish they would just come out with all the grants in your budget year and then approve it.
Yeah, well, I got to be with Dan on this one then.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'd rather spend 50,000 on boats than 85 on this.
Okay, so I'll give you this and give us the boats.
No, there's still, that's funny. That's funny.
No, because either one of them is a good
I stepped into that one.
Yeah, you did. You did. I took advantage. So here's the
Saw
thing.
that one coming. The light at the end of the tunnel was a train.
Again, we're here in that we could approve this and then in our normal budget year, put the funding. Because we're not going to be able to do this. We have to get designed, do a lot of different things. We can wait 6 months, apply for the grant, wait 6 months. We can always turn the grant down. We can say, we don't want it. And then approve the 84,000 in our normal budget year.
Where would this project be on a, I mean, we always prioritize the capital budget, capital plan, and there's always, there's the 10-year plan. Where would this fit in terms of timing and priority and what's coming up in the current next budget, which we know is going to be not fun?
No, it's not going to be fun. It would be in there. I don't think it would be a top priority. We need police cars or other things we need to have in our capital budget. But if we can get $558,000 project for 84,000, that lends a lot more credence to doing it. And we'd have to make the decision at that time if it would clear our budget, right? It wouldn't be at the top, Dan. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be at the very bottom either, though.
So I guess I have two questions on the design side of this. When I looked at that map for option 2 that goes around Lower Patak, there's a fence that's really close to the edge of the field anyways. And I'm just thinking logistically, where does that go behind the fence? Because I mean, if you've got soccer games going on a Saturday, you've got people walking through a whole bunch of crowded people. So I just don't, I can't envision where that would go unless it's somehow behind that fencing.
Yes, it would go behind the fence. All the trees that are behind the fence would have to be cleared. We would have to support the slope with fill and so with geothermal fabric. That's why it's so much more expensive. And if you look at the numbers carefully, the contingency is 20% on option 2 because of that slope and all that work that has to be done to build that up. We talked to Park and Rec about moving the field, shifting the field over, but there's no place to shift it. They've already got the irrigation system in. It's already tucked up against the slope by Kids Kingdom, and it's just a tight area. So that's why the project's so much more, is because we're tucked in between the boundary of the field and the state right-of-way. And it's that's what drives this option up so much more, other than the fact that we're adding a paved parking lot.
Then why are we selecting option 2 and not 3?
Pardon me?
Why are we selecting option 2 and not 3 then?
Option 2 just gets it away from the road. It gets it away from Kids Kingdom, and it just becomes, it's a longer trail by several hundred feet, and it's more isolated. It's more in the woods, kind of like the existing Still River Greenway that goes through, by the police station. It's just more isolated in that way. It's away from a driveway and a parking lot, and where there's a lot more congestion.
It's more woodsy.
Not much of a greenway when you're walking 300 feet next to a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right.
But I thought, I mean, I guess when we discussed the extension last year, part of the purpose that made it attractive was that it extended accessibility to our park. And I don't really see that option as extending that accessibility. I think the more direct route with better side, because I mean, the sidewalk kind of ends. We've got those 2 little handicap spots for the ice cream truck parks. And then there's not much easily accessible sidewalk. So
yeah, but this would give ADA.
But option 3 makes more sense. But
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Eileen. Option 3 makes more sense to me because, one, it gets you much close. It's ADA compliant. Well, all of them are ADA compliant.
Yeah.
But we want to be able to allow people in wheelchairs and people who are disabled to be able to get to the lower fields, which they really can't do easily now. You can get to the Kids Kingdom going down the little back and forth path, but if you want to get to the gazebo, that's a gravel walk that goes by the bathroom. This would be much closer to the gazebo. So, and people could go watch their grandkids play softball or soccer. We just thought it was, and the Parks and Rec thought so too. We just thought it was a much better option. More in keeping with being a greenway rather than a path right through the center of Town Hall.
And what is the actual distance that it adds, mileage-wise?
Option 2 is 2,500 feet,
Okay.
about a half mile.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, we're not voting on which option to approve, right? That's not our purview.
Yeah, we
Well,
are.
we're saying
It is.
Because it's
You're voting on
It is. We'd
dollar
have to vote on which money to approve.
Yeah.
Right. And I wouldn't recommend approving anything except for the option 2 that goes behind that's what the Board of Selectmen and Parks and Rec think is the best path to go.
Yeah, it's $10,000 difference. Yep.
What if we didn't pave the parking lot? What does that do?
Saves about
Reduces the amount of the
55,000.
grant.
Yeah.
We have to do some paving up there.
Out of our pocket. And yeah, I mean, you have to.
Saves us $1,000.
I mean, you potentially, if you don't use all the contingency, you get a decent chunk back on our side, or does that get offset back to the grant if the
It's really, it would be an offset to the grant because the grant's going to cover the construction.
Okay.
Right. And the grant is paying 85% of all the work. So if we cut back on the parking lot, in a way, we're kind of chopping off our nose.
We're saving $1,200.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Well, if we, I mean, if what we're doing now is voting to secure a grant, and we put this through the normal capital budgeting process in March, I'm all right with that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, same.
And Greg, just to be sure, the grant application doesn't require that the town perfect the funding upon application of the grant, right? We have time to do that.
Yes, Steve, you got to sign this one-page statement that says the Board of Selectmen has reviewed it and has approved it.
Okay. So we can still put it in our normal capital cycle. And if we don't, if it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it.
I can live with that.
Or if we don't get the funding, we don't do it.
Yeah,
From
and then
the grant.
we're back to square one.
Because we lose the 207 out the backside.
Right.
We already lost that because we didn't fund that 183.
No, we still have the 207 as of this moment, but we would have to come up with at least, what would you estimate, Greg, to even do phase option 3? Right, we'd have to come up with almost $200,000, $188,000.
183,000, right, which we don't have funded.
Right.
So
This
the
is
207
clearly
is
a
gone.
better-
We haven't funded it.
This is clearly a better solution across the board. It's a better design. It's a higher grant. It's less money from us. It's clearly better. It's just now it just has to fit into the overall structure of the capital plan.
Right.
I will tell you from Mary Knox's perspective, from Park and Rec, they would like to see this project done next summer when the field is at its lowest usage, if you will. So we'd like to get it approved as soon as we can, so it can be the design can be finished, and we can go out to bid, and we can construct it next July. That would be the ideal situation from a Park and Rec perspective.
I don't think that falls into budget season, so.
That's a little bit of a something we'll have to work through.
Yeah. But if we, ideal is build it next spring into July, but if we had to build it in the fall, okay, we lose one summer.
We could take the capital budget that's being bonded and allow for it to be spent immediately upon approval, that it doesn't have to follow the fiscal year. We have some other projects that we may want to think about that with, for example, paving, where time is of the essence, especially if we're going to skip this year's bonded projects.
That went over my head. I didn't hear it all.
Still spending money. How's that, Mark? That's what you need to know. It's still spending money.
It always is.
All right, let's make a motion. Hold on a minute here.
Motion.
So we would make a motion. We have to fund the whole project though, right?
You have to make a motion for the full amount. And I would say with 474,400 coming from a grant and 84,150 coming from the town.
Don't we need a motion from the selectmen to make a motion on that? What the selectmen recommend?
They did.
We make this on our own.
We have that in our packet, Mark.
We do.
Yep.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Awesome. I don't have it, so somebody else can read it.
Right there. Basically, we're gonna make them. Oh, let me pull it up. Hold on.
I have it.
All right, go ahead, Eileen.
Okay. I'll make a motion to as brought forward by the Board of Selectmen, as approved by the Board of Selectmen, to extend for the extension of the Still River Greenway project. Do we need to mention the rescinding the original grant offer? It's mentioned in the letter, but I don't know if we need that.
No, it's part of the new processes. We have to rescind it. So go ahead, just do the dollar amount.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the Seal River Greenway Extension Project as presented by the Board of Selectmen. That votes to rescind the original grant offer in the amount of $207,355, which was approved at a special town meeting, and reapply for the Community Connectivity Grant in the amount of $558,550, with a town share of $84,150 to reapply for the revised option 2. We're forwarding, the revised option 2.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Discussion?
So, yeah, discussion. I just want to make sure that we're not, that we're explicitly saying that it's going through the capital project, the process, that even if we're granted the grant, it's still not necessarily approved. So how do we work that into the motion?
It has to be approved in the capital plan anyway, right? I mean, we voted the last one down.
Yeah, so I would amend the motion to say for funding from the town to be approved during the normal budget cycle for capital items in the next fiscal year.
Yep.
Okay, should I try that again?
All right.
That the funding from the town to be approved in the normal capital cycle in the next fiscal year.
Okay. So I make a motion that the Board of Finance approves the Seal River Greenway Trail Extension Project as approved by the Board of Selectmen, which voted to rescind the original grant offer in the amount of $207,355, which was approved at a special town meeting in April 4th, 2019, and reapply for the Connecticut Community Connectivity Grant in the amount of $558,550, with the town share of $84,150 to reapply for the revised option 2, where the $84,150 would go through the normal capital budget process during the next fiscal year.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. All right.
All right, Steve, I'll have a letter for rescinding that tomorrow and an application for you to sign by Friday morning.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. All right. Before we forget, I'll make. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mark.
No, make your motion.
I'll make a motion that we move next to the Candlewood Lake Road water line.
Nope, we did that.
No, we didn't.
We did executive session.
We still have to
Oh,
motion.
okay.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, we had the discussion that we're going to have a Board of Finance public hearing scheduled for the 28th at 7:30. And we'll have our regular meeting. We'll set a meeting at 7 o'clock for us. Or do you want to do
Special
6:30
meeting.
and 7? Do you want to do it earlier?
No, I think that-
I would vote for,
The 7:30 is fine.
I
and
would
then
like
the 7 for
6:30 and
us.
7.
Oh, okay.
But we also have to meet a half hour before for the boat issue, right?
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's what Mark was saying, was 6:30 for the boat issue and 7 for the public.
Gotcha.
Is that
If that
okay?
works for everyone else. So
I'll
it's a
figure
special
it
meeting
out.
at 6:30.
Well, the
I
public hearing, Brianna, the public hearing, we're not making any votes. We're just listening to people. So if
No,
we get hung
the
up,
6:30 for me is just that I don't usually waltz it, get in the door from work until 6:30-ish. So let's figure
Alright.
it out. It's fine. If 6:30 works for everybody, I'll figure it out.
It's 6:45, it's a vote. Steve finds the money, we vote. Steve doesn't find the money, we vote.
I'm
Go to
okay with that.
6:45, 15 minutes.
6:45 then. I'm good with that. We'll set the motion is we set the public hearing for 7 PM, October 28th for the discussion of the Candlewood Lake water extension, correct? Water line.
You think we only need 15 minutes? That's fine. I'm good with that. It's fine.
As
Okay.
an invite to the meeting.
Yep.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
All
All right, Steve, we're gonna do the meeting.
Okay.
right, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I had a real long day today and I got an early morning tomorrow, so I'm gonna have to cut off. You guys can finish without me. I'm sure Steve's heartbroken.
I am heartbroken. I was going to suggest, I have about 8 things for the first selectman's report. If it's all right with you, I'll just send you all an email. There's nothing major there. I'll just give you an update.
That'll work for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
Before we go, Marcia, is there anything burning? Because we'll just adjourn this meeting then and pick it up next month. Is there anything burning, Marcia?
No, we're just going to continue to spend our COVID costs, nothing burning. I will email you the PowerPoint presentation and you can look at it and read it yourself.
Everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Steve, you
Yep.
good with that?
I'm absolutely good. There's nothing burning on the front burner here. And you
All
got
right.
everything.
Mark, make your motion then.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.